and decorative arts. So without further ado, Elizabeth, please.
Thank you so much. Really great on a nice summer day to see so many people in a closed room, to be in the dark for an hour. So I'm going to do some housekeeping first. So please silence your phones. We really need that to have happen. And during the question and answer period, please, we're using a microphone because there are people on Zoom who are listening in, and that's the only way they can hear your question. And so please be attentive to that. Everyone is invited to a reception in the Learning Engagement Center after the talk, which is across the way, and there'll be a parade leading that way. Copies of A Path to Paradise, Judith Schaechter Stained Glass Art, and the exhibition catalog, cueing David Barquist here to hold it up. Workshop of the World, Arts and Crafts in Philadelphia will be available to be purchased with a 10% discount. So that's significant. And the artist has graciously agreed to sign the copies of her book. And everyone, of course, is invited to see the exhibition, which just opened to members today. So we'll give you a sticker so you can go up and be a member for the remainder of our day here at the museum and gain access before everyone else gets to see it opening to the public tomorrow. So why are you here today? Why are you, besides hearing Judith, of course, the occasion is the celebration of the Workshop of the World, Arts and Crafts in Philadelphia, which is an exhibition that's opening to the public tomorrow and going through October. It's in our, what we call the Dietrich Galleries on the first floor. And the curatorial team that put this together, and I hope they'll stand for a nanosecond, David Barquist, Colin Fanning, and of course, our exhibition assistant, Umberto Morales Cruz, who I'm not sure is here at the moment, but probably be arriving shortly. This team has been incredible. And I was and Elizabeth Agro, sorry. Yes. I always forget myself. Anyway, these gentlemen have been working on this show for quite some time, and they had the foresight to think about how a contemporary component could be added to the exhibition. And they graciously invited me to be part of this team. And it's really been such a pleasure and my honor to work with the two of you. And you will see the outcome is just glorious upstairs. I was been very nervous 5 weeks of installing. And today I'm just extremely feeling joyous and proud. So I hope you will agree. So just a little bit about the show. This exhibition was made, and just to credit our funders, of course, it's made possible through the generous support of the Terra Foundation for American Art, the Center for American Art here at the museum, the Women's Committee, who supports everything that we do here at the Philadelphia Museum, Katie Adams and Tony Schaffer, Art and Deborah Kastelbaum, Martha Hamilton, and Wister Morris III, the Annual Exhibition Fund, Andrea Baldeck, and Julia and David Fleischner, Robert Hayes, and Mark W. Strong, and Dana Strong. So without their support, we don't get to do what we're doing today upstairs and the reception to follow. So the show, in the late 1800s, Philadelphia was an industrial powerhouse known as the Workshop of the World. Artists and designers, manufacturers in the region challenged problems that accompanied industrialization by turning to the influential principles of the British arts and crafts movement, articulated by writers like John Ruskin and makers like William Morris: simplicity in design, honesty in construction, and truth to materials and the value of handwork. Many Philadelphians were exposed to these design reform ideas through the Centennial Exposition of 1876, which gave rise to the Pennsylvania Museum and School of Industrial Arts. Sorry, I lost my place. Later, the Philadelphia Museum of Art and the UArts became UArts eventually. Today, the legacy of arts and crafts continues in the work of contemporary Philadelphia artists who make the city a workshop for imagining a different future. And so we're going to be listening to Judith Schaechter today, who's agreed and graciously, it's really my honor to bring you forward here today, Judith, at the museum. So Judith is one of a very few artists working today to use stained glass techniques to create works that resonate within the larger contemporary art landscape and shatter numerous conventions of the medium. She became enchanted by Gothic art after a visit to the Museum of Fine Arts, Boston, with her father. Schaechter's stained glass works, with their distinct imagery and subject matter, are directly informed by Gothic images of crucifixions and beheadings, blended with the full color and line delineations of comics and the ideas from popular culture. From 1979 to 83, Schaecter attended Rhode Island School of Design, originally majoring in painting. Seeking creative freedom in creating work that embraced the decorative, stylized, and illustrative, she found refuge in an elective stained glass course. Liberated from the yoke of painting, she was able to use her own voice in her work through doodles and assert herself in stained glass. She moved to Philadelphia after graduating in 1983. Considered an innovative technician, Schaecter combines techniques, layering, engraving, collage, painting, photomechanical stenciling, sandblasting, and digital technology with great skill, yielding superb results that is the signature of her work. Mainly a studio practitioner, she has inspired and influenced artists since 1993 and has served as an adjunct professor at the former University of the Arts, Pennsylvania Academy of Fine Art, and currently at Tyler School of Art.
No, retired.
Retired, excuse me, corrected, yay. Schaecter calls herself a decorative artist and very much aligns herself with craft and its tenets of skill and process. Her innovative techniques and virtuosic skill have gained her recognition by the likes of the USA Artist Rockefeller Fellowship, John Simon Guggenheim Fellowship, Pew Fellowship in the Arts, and a Joan Mitchell Foundation Award, to name a few. Having chosen this century-old art form, Schaecter is not bound by its traditional rules. Her skill and subject matter transcend the expectation. Judith, please.
Oh my God. I strive to inhabit that introduction. Thank you so much. And thank you everyone for being here. And thank you for asking me to speak. And thank you for including me in the exhibition. I had the chance to have a preview before, just about a half an hour ago. It's really an incredible show. You cannot miss it. It's amazing. So I want to apologize in advance for the occasional scatological comment. About 3 years ago, I undertook a project which I designed deliberately to be the most difficult and agonizing project of my life, a goal which it admirably fulfilled. And I wanted to make it 99% by myself. Why would I do this? I did not do this to torture myself, although that's always fun. I didn't do it to kill time. I didn't even do it to prove that it's possible. But maybe I did it to prove that doing something crazy and unnecessary like that is actually worth it. And I can only show you the result, and you can decide if you agree. So you're going to be seeing a lot of pictures of this. And I just want to go back one slide for a second, because I didn't put it on my notes, but I wanted to say something about calling the talk make-believe. First of all, for whatever reason, a few years ago, like the word make-believe suddenly struck me like I'd never heard it before. And I was like, that is an odd juxtaposition of words. Like it's, pretending, but for children. But there are a lot of people who demand to, they don't believe in something unless they can see it. Like there's the expression, seeing is believing. And I heard yesterday on NPR, or maybe it was the day before, some expert was talking about how he's like the leading expert on determining when something's an AI fake, and he can't determine it anymore, so we're totally screwed. And so seeing is no longer believing. But I will tell you, if you made it yourself, you believe it. You know it's real when you made it yourself. And we're not going to know what's real anymore. So we're going to depend on handmade objects in the future to know what's real. So yes, I will. That's why I'm here. During this talk, I may occasionally use the word art and craft interchangeably. Please forgive me. I do not believe that they are synonymous. At this point, I believe that craft is superior. Do I need to repeat that? Craft is superior to art, and here's why. It has cornered the market on multi-millennium longevity, inclusivity, democracy, and universality, all things fine arts lacks. Craft is usually seen as a subset of art, the material and technical part. But I ask you to consider that art is actually a subset of craft, invented by a fairly small group of European intellectuals, patrons, and institutions with a specific agenda. And when I edited this with AI, it made me remove males. So I don't know what that means, but I did put that in there originally. By the way, I have a much, much, much longer version of this talk, which I will post on my blog. I don't wish the troubles of the art world on the craft world. Around 1990, I was attending an opening in New York City when someone asked me who fabricated my work. And I said, I do. What I remember most was the look of absolute shock and disbelief on this person's face. That was not the answer they thought I was going to give. But who did they think made it? I mean, someone made it, right? And there was a sort of sense that, like, she thought that the actual making is not done by human beings, but invisible elves or mice, like in Beatrix Potter's book, The Tailor of Gloucester. I have at times been mistaken for a magician or a ditch digger, but rarely for myself, someone who learned something and practiced it. To this day, I notice people have a strange relationship with craft. The classic example is actually a cell phone. It doesn't spontaneously generate, yet how it came to exist is beyond most of our capacity to imagine, let alone do ourselves. It seems magical. The person who was surprised that I make my own work was in awe. But being an art world insider, she had also been taught that the end justifies the means, not the means justifying the end, and that the making part was subservient to the conceptual part. Among civilians who don't know better, I often find the opposite. My work is valued because it looks like I spent a lot of time and effort on it. And believe you me, I most certainly did. It's as if the effort reassures people that I'm not trying to get one over on them. They're happy their child couldn't make it, to paraphrase the colloquial complaint about modern art. But I don't charge by the hour, and I don't charge by the pound. The value of an artwork, I kind of charge by the linear inch, but that's another story. The value of an artwork is not in the material, nor in the physical effort, nor even in the physical object itself. Yet separating the thing from its making presumes a separation between the idea of a thing and the thing itself, which I do not like. Like the roots of the word suggest, craft has a dark side. Crafty means suspicious. So we often devalue process when we're not familiar with it. Why is craft knowledge powerful, mysterious, and suspicious? Why is it so often invisible? The answer is specialization is convenient. The less visible production becomes, the easier it is to ignore the people doing it. We don't merely outsource labor. We increasingly view physicality itself as inferior. As for craft objects themselves, they're almost too familiar. Ceramic bowls feed us. Wooden chairs hold our butts. Fabric dresses cover our naughty bits, and then more ceramic bowls flush away our waste. Perhaps better to seek mystery in things that help us forget we have bodies. Craft suffers from being caught between arcane knowledge and bodily function. People often say these days that the divide between art and craft is over. Maybe only the most Philistine would publicly sneer at craft now. Well, I don't even want it to be over. I want to win. But What I tend to notice, however, is fine arts sort of discovering the artistic potential of glass or clay and getting credit for it, while craftspeople remain in the trenches. The bosses are the same, and we have been colonized, in other words. And I just want to say, this is a Judy Chicago stained glass window, and it is plug ugly. So there. I think as a species, we often hate our bodies. We overvalue the content of our brains. We strive to widen the gap between body and soul as if someday we can be all light and no poop. But this has consequences. Imagine your body as lesser, and all physical bodies, including the planet, become exploitable, dominated, commodified, and ultimately subjugated. The implications seem to be our irrelevance or even extinction. I skipped a paragraph here. I wanted to say a little earlier, it's just one sentence. In the end, either some people value craft, handmade craft, or they don't. And I would suggest that not valuing handmade is a form of species dysmorphia that begins with mechanization and it ends perhaps with AI. And it is the ultimate concession to a Cartesian mind-body split. Anyway, the implications seem to be our own irrelevance or even extinction. Speed, convenience, scalability, and apathy are the four horsemen of the apocalypse. And no, I have no solutions to offer. I'm only suggesting that we pay attention to what disappears when making disappears. And since I don't want to be a total bummer, I will say maybe, just maybe, we can correct our course on our own with the help perhaps from a meteor strike or a supervolcano eruption. We're going to need it. All right, craft history. My first memory is of drapes. I was about 3 years old, and I was lying in my bed looking at the folds in the curtains, which distorted what I imagine was probably a floral pattern. But I was seeing terrifying monsters, kind of like the back page of Mad magazine. And I knew the power of the decorative arts at that moment. Later, I drew my mother a picture. She looked at it and said, "What a lovely picture of an angel." "It's a carpet," I said. Later, I stared at bathroom tiles for hours, admiring scenes of capsizing ships in horrendous storms at sea. You see it? And thus, a future craftsperson was born. It's already sunk in that tile. I attended Rhode Island School of Design in the 1980s. Feel free to compare and contrast Rhode Island School of Design with University of the Arts. I'll be enabling that in mere moments. At RISD, my instructors, the generation before me, had faced the stigma of craft, lower prices and lower prestige. They taught us in the glass program to always identify ourselves as artists and never, ever as craftsmen, which of course men would be how we said it back then. No one but the most ignorant hobbyist would ever, ever call themselves a glass artist. I don't think they intended to do this, but they taught me to be ashamed of craft. It took years to understand the forces of history behind all this. I arrived in art school, a fresh-faced naif, with visions of making pretty pictures, unaware that certain categories, the decorative, the beautiful, the ornamental, and sometimes the well-made, had been in disrepute for about a century. I would have been happy to make art to match your sofa. Clement Greenberg had decided that all profoundly original art looks ugly at first, and we art students all understood immediately that making ugly things was the path to guaranteed profundity. Hooray! All right, trigger alert, hide your eyes. At the time, I was very happy that beauty was abolished from art because I personally felt very ugly myself. And I truly enjoyed making ugly and shocking things and forcing people to look at them for minutes at a time. I was also an incredibly poor craftsperson, which you can probably kind of tell from these pictures. I delighted in telling my teachers as the work shed glass parts during critiques. The technique didn't matter because I was conceptual. In 1983, I moved to Philadelphia. And by 1993, I was teaching at University of the Arts with Sharon Church, Rob McCormick, James Makins, Mi Kyung Lee, and so many others. But mainly Sharon Church. Our primary task seemed to be arguing for the value of craft, usually with some Ruskin-esque defense that I'm sorry to say no one really cares about except us. My colleagues were absolutely passionate about their practice, and they certainly weren't about to apologize for it. They taught me that craft had intelligence, history, dignity, and humanity. They taught me that craft as an ethos was as capable of enlightenment as any other art form. They taught me to be proud of being a craftsperson. This gets me a little choked up. And here I stand today, intensely grateful for that gift and intensely proud to be a craftsperson, dare I say, a glass artist. And with 45 years of experience, I am pleased to tell you that my work no longer falls apart. At least not during the critique. As I am sure most of you in this room know, and on Zoom, UArts abruptly shut its doors in 2024. And seeing that show upstairs today, this afternoon, it was brought home to me how unbelievably heartbreaking and devastating a loss that is to our community. There are no words. So please go see the show. During COVID, the crafts department was asked to attend a Zoom meeting. And during that Zoom meeting, they sunsetted the crafts program. Sunsetting sounds so beautiful. We all love sunsets. But we knew what it meant. It was a horrible, horrible moment. They did violence to Philadelphia's legacy as a center of craft. And there are really no words to express my devastation and rage at this event. It's so unthinking. And then like school went out of business, so F you. All right. In my original lecture, I talked more about Philadelphia's craft history, but I really don't know it because I'm not really an art historian, but I just wanted to acknowledge that the history of fine craft here, and Elizabeth, you did a better job in your introduction than I'm going to do. It stretches back to the 1876 Centennial Exhibition and continued through the arts and crafts movement and the studio craft movement and institutions such as Helen Drutt Gallery, Snyderman Works, the Clay Studio, the Fabric Workshop, the Center for Art and Wood, Tyler Moore, and UArts. I mean, what a place this is. And to think, I landed here totally by accident. I moved here because I had a boyfriend here, but I had no idea about the history here. And I will also say, sort of unacknowledged in some of the history of Philadelphia as a craft capital is that a craftsperson could, at least for a while, afford to have real estate, which is incredibly important in being able to make craft things. And that's what kept me here. Real estate. But I love Philly. You can take the Philadelphia out of my cold, dead hands. What's pleasure got to do with it? It's understandable in hindsight that 20th century artists feared craft's mighty power. To further understand why craft was disparaged, I want to take a look at the intersection of beauty and skill. Who has time, determination, or money to learn a skill? Why bother in the face of mechanization or now AI? Skill can be painted as classist, unfair, and exclusionary. Not everyone can learn a skill, and sometimes otherwise brilliant artists can't actually paint their way out of a paper bag. In a culture increasingly interested in ideas, skilled mastery can look less like an achievement and more like showing off. At some point, around the time Duchamp exhibited his urinal, skill got demoted. It became the muscles or the labor. Concept that dematerialized, idealized, fluffy cloud of ether became the brains, the boss, if you will, and there the twain shall meet. But we're so ambivalent as a culture. We want everyone to have a white-collar career. We want our children to grow up to be Duchamps exhibiting urinals, not plumbers installing actual urinals. Yet we really hate it when the toilet breaks or when something is installed poorly. For what it's worth, we also expect our athletes not to engage in sloppy sports. Go Birds! So when I think about how de-skilling happened in art school, I'm grateful I'm not required to paint in a classical French Academy style. But I also think denigrating skill is another manifestation of our discomfort with physical labor, and that it comes with hidden costs that we may not wish to pay. As for me, even when I wasn't skilled, I had the decency to be embarrassed by that in private. Works that fall apart don't usually sell well unless you're Julian Schnabel. Then you can get away with such shenanigans. Art school pretends monetary value doesn't matter, which is a legacy of serving an aristocratic class of independently wealthy students who can afford to not sell their work. That they foist this off as a life of the mind is another insult steeped in mind-body dysmorphia. One reason it was an especially big tragedy that UArt's craft program died was that it was one place that truly integrated skill and concept into a single pedagogy. Skill in my work is manifested in stained glass technique. It was gruesomely uncool to aspire to be a glass artist when I was at RISD, but to tell you the truth, I found the idea of pioneering new techniques to be very exciting. I could see that stained glass had been radically underexplored, and I was eager to dive right in and bring some new ideas to the table. So I have some pictures. This is a type of glass called flash glass, which is characterized by a thin veneer of color on top of basically, in this case, a clear layer. And what I'm doing is I'm engraving into it. I'm sandblasting it first to cut into the surface. And then I'm going into it with hand tools. Some of them, like on the right, are just hand files. Those are diamond files. They don't even plug in. So, yay. I have some more pictures. So you see this section with the woman in it. It's basically a color separation done in glass. And on the left is what it looked like all together. And an example from the dome. And I got to take new pictures because I'm always showing this one because it has this handy thing. So you see the left-hand column is blue on clear flash glass that has been sandblasted and engraved. The middle column is red on clear flash glass that has been sandblasted, engraved, painted with black enamel that fires on in a kiln, and with something called silver stain, which also fires on in a kiln and turns the glass yellow. And then I have, in the color separation, blue, red, yellow, the three primary colors, and I can make just about anything. There's a little bit of pink in that. That's probably pink oil paint. Pink oil paint comes off with UV light, so if it's something that is going to be exposed to ultraviolet light, it has to be done with pink enamel. I don't always make the color separations match. The two cartouches on the right are two variations of those two pieces of glass on top of each other. Craft interests me most when it includes ornamentation, which I see as an effort to embellish, to make something beautiful beyond what its function requires. I have always been absolutely obsessed with ornamentation and beauty, despite the best efforts of my modernist professors. I should probably define beauty before going on. I'm going to give you my recipe. So if you want to go home and make some beauty, this is the ingredients. You take the measurable aspects of design that can be pretty, such as composition, color, harmony, luminosity, and so on and so forth. You probably know all the design elements already. And then you mix them together with some depth. If you want more information, you can ask later. The depth is important. If you don't put the depth in there, it's not going to be beautiful. Beauty became suspect for a lot of reasons. It's hard to say beauty is truth and truth beauty when you're looking at newsreels of war and poverty. Advertising co-opted beauty to manipulate desire for profit. Women got wise to the oppression of the beauty industry, and others got wise to historical standards of beauty as reaffirming status, elitism, capitalism, and patriarchy. Beauty came to seem frivolous, dishonest, and politically compromised. Off with its head. But I knew beauty was important because I'm a female, and I had been fed a steady diet of messages reminding me that my value was more or less in my appearance solely. And I realize now that not worrying about how pretty something is a form of male privilege. Back then, I had the sense to realize it didn't matter what my male professors told me about beauty, because I could tell it was clearly of critical importance. As mentioned, I enjoyed making ugly, unsettling, creepy things and getting people to look at them. But at some point, my work shifted towards depicting ugly and treacherous or uncomfortable thoughts as sumptuously beautiful images. Not only could stained glass transform me into a swan, but it could also transform my ugly feelings into something a little more palatable. For many years, my work centered on transforming the wretched into the beautiful. Unspeakable grief, unbearable sentimentality, or nerve-wracking ambivalence, and representing it in such a way that it became inviting and safe to contemplate. I am at one with those who believe art is a way of feeling one's feelings in a deeper, more poignant way. I am also not above believing that a spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down. At this point, I think my work became a version of doll play. That is actually me in the upper left. And art became my proxy. I learned I could seduce people with dazzling art instead of using my face and body. The characters I depicted were not self-portraits, just externalized vessels for my feelings and a way to put forward an improved version of myself that wasn't a total lie, just enough of a lie. And here's some examples. I consider all of the characters I've ever done to be really beautiful. Craft, ornament, and decoration were caught in the crossfire of the modernist dilemma because they're associated with both beauty and skill. More importantly, they're also associated with physical pleasure. They've all been accused of seduction, manipulation, superficiality, spiritual bankruptcy, dishonesty, elitism, and wasting precious resources. What they have in common is they create pleasure, and we can be deeply suspicious of pleasure. The more we desire pleasure, the more we fear being deprived of it. Physical pleasure is entangled with our most vital longings for connection, meaning, love, and belonging. Because these feelings make us vulnerable, we often reject pleasure in advance. We relegate beauty and ornament to the realm of the superficial and congratulate ourselves for our seriousness. Best to say it's in the eye of the beholder and be done with it. Best to say ornament is crime. And what does it prove at the end of the day? Does banishing pleasure in the form of beauty really make us better students or citizens? Does it really make us more spiritual? Did getting rid of the decorative finally liberate artists from the need to match the sofa? Did it prove artists were profoundly serious? Did it make men feel manlier to put down the domestic arts? Yeah, I didn't think so. Hating physical pleasure does not eradicate the need for it. It merely sends it underground. To claim that pleasure is incapable of meaning is a very serious business. You don't want to go there. It is to commit to a philosophy of austerity on the false premise that bodies are easiest dealt with when denied. One step closer to dehumanization. Welcome, your robot overlords. To claim that pleasure is incapable of meaning is to ignore the overwhelming evidence that ornament is not a class privilege, it is a human instinct. Across all cultures, people embellish beyond necessity. It's how we make things matter more by making them special. Take that, Oliver Cromwell, Adolf Loos, and Clement Greenberg. And the next third, the third of the talk, I want to make a feeble case for why handwork matters in the time of mechanization and AI. So much has been said about AI. You know the rap. It takes jobs away from artists. It produces slop. AI has no soul. So how can it make art that speaks to human souls? To be honest, people thought my dome was AI for like a minute on Instagram. That was just bizarre. To be honest, most people can't tell the difference between AI-generated stuff and human-made stuff, and soon they won't be able to anyway. And worse, I think they don't really care as consumers. I think Walter Benjamin was wrong. Aura can be effectively simulated. But of course, that doesn't mean it should be. Why purposely contribute to the irrelevantification of people in the name of money? It pays, I think, to look at an artist's process. If you think that the first step is that an artist has an idea, then you may not realize you're enabling technologies like AI. Because if the idea is paramount, then it doesn't really matter who makes it, and the making itself is merely labor. The head wins. You might as well go upload your consciousness into a hard drive. All poop vanquished, well done. And I just want to say, in the course of writing this, I thought, like, if you upload your consciousness, like these people who want to be immortal, isn't that going to really feel a lot like Lou Gehrig's disease? Like, I don't know. I'm glad it's Jeff Bezos that's going to do it. As a craftsperson, the product of UArt's crafts program, even if I wasn't actually a student, I learned that the idea comes in concert with the making. Not before, not after, but alongside. And it is my personal belief that that is the best way. As an artist working in a two-dimensional medium, my work begins with drawing. All modes of drawing have been going the way of the dinosaur for many decades, long before AI. This is bad, so bad. Most artists don't draw anymore. Most art sucks. I think these things might be connected. It's not that they can't render realistic figures. That is not what I mean by drawing. It's that they can't think visually. Drawing is manifesting thought materially. Something happened to me as a young artist struggling with drawing that I would describe as I found my artistic voice. Learning to draw was synonymous with learning what was uniquely mine. I couldn't see anything from my head until I am watching it appear in real time, coming out my hand onto a sketchbook page. That amazes me. Like, I don't see that and then draw it. I see it when I'm drawing it. And this is what creation means to me. Something to make something that wasn't there before, something I didn't even conceive of before. So you can draw out an idea. The word to draw means to pull, right? It means to pull an idea out of your head. I, on the other hand, learned how to draw. And I found something startling, that anything you practice, you actually get better at. I've taught in art schools for 34 years, and students often tell me they can't draw. Funny, neither could I when I arrived at RISD. I have seen my students trace Google images on their phones like it's a little teeny weeny light table. And they say, I can't draw. And I say, and you're never going to be able to. Because you're not doing it now. When are you planning on starting? Anyway, and this is related to why work made by somebody other than the artist comes out different. Not that you will know, because you don't get to see the what would have been product next to what did get made. But I assure you, you would get two very different results. A lot of meaning, maybe most of it, arises during the making, avoiding traps of intention, which is often ego-based and dreadfully boring. Work made to match an intention is often stilted and bloodless. Work responding to its own creation is alive with unpredictable energy and inspiration. It seems more in dialogue with life rather than delivering a lecture. AI assumes ideas matter more than making. Craft teaches us that meaning emerges through making, and drawing is just an example of it, which is why I went on to that. So it seems very clear to me personally that handwork, including drawing from my imagination, has saved my life, and therefore it should probably be able to save everyone else's life. Wouldn't everybody be interested in this? I don't know. All right. Craft is a devotional act. AI doesn't care about you, but you might not notice. This strikes me as a tragedy because I think that art can care about you, and craft especially cares about you. Craft is all about caring, and the only way to prove caring is to set aside our needs aside and put others ahead of us. That's why a cheap, broken toilet is such an insult. Someone didn't care enough about you to make your toilet flush? Ouch! And how do I start the video? Do I click a second time? We'll find out. Yes, okay. There's so many ways to go about making an art project, but it was and usually is my intention to go about it in the most difficult, agonizing way possible, as I said earlier. And here's why. Until recently, whenever I heard the expression labor of love, I assumed that the person doing the labor loved, or at least enjoyed slightly, the process itself. I thought they were talking about intrinsic rewards. Now, owing to over 40 years of experience, I think it means something else. I think it means that the maker loves you. I mean, that's what I mean when I say my work is a labor of love. I do like doing it sometimes. My love for glass and glass process is the kind of love that also includes struggle, conflict, boredom, frustration, and hate. It may be enjoyable at times, but not always. But when all's said and done, it's not really about that. It all clicked for me when a friend of mine told me that their love language was cooking. And I realized that my love language was my art. Somehow I understood that art is the best way for me to express my love for others. And this is like true confessions time. Better than talking, better than sex, better than anything. I'm a nun. For me, to make a work of art is to make love. And that said, the reason for my labor intensity should be obvious. I cannot work hard enough to love, and there is no length too far to aim for. So is this thing run through at least once? Oh my God, well, you get the idea. And I want you to know that's probably like 2 days condensed into like 5 minutes. It's my deeply held belief that extreme labor intensity can be an act of devotion, not to one's own intentions, but to the idea that care and the act of making still has value in the age of mechanical reproduction and ultimately the age of artificial intelligence. I worry that what we're capable of creating as human beings is being neglected. I worry that the commitment of time and energy is seen as wasteful when there are more efficient and convenient methods of making. Even other stained glass people have told me, like, oh, why don't you get a sandblaster with tiny little tips and do it all that way? It's like, are you out of your mind? I wanted the dome to be an example of what's possible with just hands, brains, passion, and time. And I have to say, it also costs money, unfortunately, because we don't live in a gift economy. That I wanted to prove what's possible with hands, brains, passion, time, to prove that there is value in the sacrifice of efficiency and convenience. Perhaps it's like the way religious people pray for their constituency. Devotion to craft can demonstrate that love, reverence, and dedication are sacred, meaningful, and transcendent for their own sake. Craft is all about walking the walk and not just talking the talk, which is why we may shiver when we hear an artist didn't fabricate their own work, even though we're all too sophisticated to tell anybody that's how we feel. And that's also why I fabricate all of my work, except for the parts that I didn't fabricate, which are the tiny part. Not all labor-intensive work is devotional. If the work is done mainly out of perfectionism, ambition, or fear, even if it is intensely time-consuming, it's still driven by ego or outcome. The focus is on control, mastery, or proving worth. This was foremost in my mind with the dome, because I know I can lean into all those things without noticing it if I'm not careful. It's not really inherently bad, it's just not devotional in spirit. However, when time and effort are offered in the spirit of care and reverence, the labor itself becomes an act of devotion. And I don't see this type of intensity as a form of self-punishment or a display of ego, but as a gesture of faith in the value of attention. Every hour, every minute is spent is a way of saying that care still matters, that something made slowly, by hand and with love, the complicated kind of love that I described, can be sacred simply because someone went to the trouble. As it becomes ever clearer that carelessness will lead to the death of our planet and perhaps our species, demonstrations of care despite the inconvenience are more important than ever. This is unconditional love. And here's a little video, which I guess I have to click on. So this is the stages of one of the panels in the dome, so you can get an idea of what it looks like in progress. There you go. Obviously, I believe I believe that art without devotional sacrifice is lacking, meaning I actually believe in human sacrifice, or a form of human sacrifice. A chunk of the artist, me in the case of the dome, should stay with the work forever. I don't get to keep that part of myself. Without that, it will never have any autonomous life force, and it will not be inspiring to others. That's what inspiration is. inspiriting, the passing of the breath of life from one to another. And this harkens to the true erotic definition of creativity. It always means to create life. To those iconoclasts who find this competes with God, well, they may be correct. That's why there's hubris. I promised you some hubris. I am deeply invested in dissolving mind-body splits, and I'm fond of reminding people that a good portion of your brain is devoted to your hands and your eyes. Clearly, that makes craft the ultimate conceptual art, just saying. As mentioned before, denying sensual pleasure as a carrier of meaning is not only false, but also desperately depressing and pointless. Ultimately, thinking of our brain as a squishy thing in a skull separate from the environment is also false. We are not angels in a meat sock. To paraphrase Anjan Chatterjee, the head of the neuroaesthetics lab at Penn, we arise from nature and exist wholly consolidated with it. Our brain doesn't end outside the cranium. It extends out our limbs, through our hands and feet, and it extends to fill the universe. To divide the creative process into thinking and then doing is to doom creativity to manufacturing. Another reason why we may secretly feel uncomfortable when we hear an artist didn't have a hand in their work. As I said before, my intention was to go about making the dome in the most difficult way possible. I hope I've shown you why I think there's value in that, and therefore in all craft by extension. Craft is my love language. It's not just work. It's devotion made visible. Every careful action, every painstaking touch, every hour spent serving what might seem trivial is a rebellion against a world that forgets to care. It is beauty's labor, pleasure's insistence, and a refusal to let life elapse unnoticed and uncared for. To make by hand is to declare that love matters, that attention matters, and that we fragile, mortal, puny humans matter. And that, more than anything, is why we need to keep making. So thank you. I will take questions if you will have any.
Yeah, and my colleague Julia and I are happy to pass mics for any questions that come up. And if there are any questions from the Zoom audience, we can also read those out loud. So,
Sarah?
I have an easy question. There was an early slide where you said, I prefer wallpaper to most painting, and then it said FWIW. What is FWIW?
For what it's worth.
Thank you.
Not your painting, Sarah, everyone else's.
Wasn't Bishop.
Well, thank you so much for that incredibly rousing, defense of craft. I would actually like to ask more about your preference for wallpaper over painting. Could you expand on that a little bit?
One thing I think about wallpaper and domestic goods is that you live with them. So they're much more influential. Like in terms of like the power to influence you. Do you think going to an art museum is like, culturally important and like dignified and all of that? And it's great. I love museums. But, the stuff that was in the house of my parents, it haunts me forever. So I think it's really powerful. We do respond to that sort of stuff. And I love wallpaper. Who doesn't like wallpaper? It's funny. I remember coming to the PMA some years ago to see a Brancusi show, but it was mobbed. And I ended up in a hallway looking at Dutch tiles. by myself, and I was like, this is so much better. I'm so happy. Uh, so, I don't know. The stuff's amazing. Misha has a question.
Thank you, Judith. This was incredible. And I'm curious how processes for making like printmaking, photography, casting, where you can end up with something without evidence of the hand fit into what you're saying about this vision that you have of craft and of beauty and a mind-body unity.
I do a lot of digital stuff. I work in Photoshop. I don't hate AI. AI taught me this morning how to install the Pandora desktop app. That was very helpful. I think the idea of hand can be extended to other things. I mean, printmaking and photography, like I've done some printmaking. I wouldn't say I've really done photography. I took a photography class once, so I don't know if I am familiar with all those processes that much, but just being creative, making stuff, you know. That's a terrible answer. Did I answer your question at all?
Yeah, a little bit.
Okay.
And I have one last question for you, which is, could you tell us about your work that's in Workshop of the World?
Certainly. The piece that's here is called Over Our Dead Bodies, which was designed during COVID. And the title was certainly inspired by that. Although I was looking at Indian textiles, pampalors and stuff like that, which is a textile that has a depiction of a tree of life on it. And I wanted to have the whole cycle of life so that the tree is growing out of, essentially a burial ground. And so you can see the bottom, which has skulls and stuff, and the trees growing out of it. And I just wanted to make like a fusion of life, like a profusion and an effusion. It's not that different than some of the things I was thinking about in the dome. And I don't know if I could think of anything else to say about it, but I'll tell you, I fabricated it at Byers Stained Glass in Germantown, and a section of it smashed to pieces while we were doing it. That was fun. And yep.
For going to buy her.
There you go. So yeah, I remade it. You can't tell. You would never. You can go out there and try and guess which one it is, but it's been remade, so you won't guess.
Wonderful, thank you. And I encourage everyone to go and see it for yourself in Workshop of the World. We're about at time, so let's give a round of applause for Judith.